Hello, America! JOC here with your Ranting Politics headline updates, where we are diving into today's most explosive political stories that you need to know about. Coming up on today's packed episode, Speaker Mike Johnson floats a truly wild idea about eliminating federal courts that don't rule his way. Just wait until you hear this power play straight from Washington. President Trump's putting his signature on a controversial executive order demanding citizenship proof for voter registration. Is this protection of democracy or voter suppression in disguise? Then, a remarkable turn of events in Gaza as Palestinians take to the streets calling for Hamas to leave. We've got the details on these rare protests and what they might mean for the conflict. And finally, a video that's got everyone talking, spring breakers in bikinis failing spectacularly at basic U.S. citizenship questions. You won't believe some of these answers. It might just make you question our entire education system. Stick around for all this and more in your daily dose of unfiltered news and common sense commentary. This is Ranting Politics Headline Updates. Well, it looks like the Speaker of the House is floating some seriously dramatic measures to deal with judges who aren't ruling in Trump's favor. According to NBC News, Speaker Mike Johnson told reporters on Tuesday that Congress could potentially eliminate entire federal courts that have issued rulings against the Trump administration. "We do have the authority over the federal courts, as you know. We can eliminate an entire district court. We have power of funding over the courts and all these other things," Johnson said, adding ominously that desperate times call for desperate measures and Congress is going to act. This isn't just idle talk. The Constitution does give Congress power over establishing lower federal courts, and there is historical precedent for court elimination. Back in 1913, Congress abolished the Commerce Court, and in 1982, they eliminated the Court of Claims and the Court of Customs and Patent Appeals. The remarks come after federal judges have blocked several Trump administration actions, particularly on immigration. Republicans are especially upset with U.S. District Judge James Boasberg, who tried to halt Trump from using the Alien Enemies Act to deport Venezuelan migrants. House Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan is planning to hold hearings focused on Boasberg and other district judges next week. He's also talking with GOP appropriators about what he called legislative remedies, hinting at using the power of the purse to put pressure on the courts. But don't expect this to happen overnight. The path to actually defunding or eliminating courts would face major hurdles. Republicans would need near unanimous agreement in their narrow House majority, and they'd need to convince moderate appropriators like Reps. Dave Joyce to get on board. Even if they did get something through the House, the Senate would likely reject any bill that defunded the courts. They'd need at least 7 Democrats to overcome a filibuster, and even some Republicans like Senator Josh Hawley have expressed concerns, noting that eliminating district courts would create massive backlogs. For now, Johnson seems to be pursuing a middle path, announcing that the House will vote next week on a bill that would bar district court judges from issuing nationwide injunctions. But the very suggestion of eliminating courts has raised serious concerns about the separation of powers and the independence of the judiciary in our constitutional system. President Trump has signed an executive order that will require Americans to provide proof of citizenship when registering to vote. The order mandates government-issued proof of U.S. citizenship on voter registration forms and directs the Attorney General to establish information-sharing agreements with state election officials to identify potential election fraud or violations. "There are other steps that we will be taking in the coming weeks," Trump said just before signing the document. "We think we'll be able to end up getting fair elections." The president added, "It's an honor to sign this one. I sign all of them, but to sign this one is a great honor." The executive order doesn't stop at citizenship requirements. It also attempts to bar states from counting mail ballots that election officials receive after Election Day and conditions federal election-related funding on states complying with these new federal election integrity measures. According to the order, documentary proof of citizenship would include a U.S. passport, a real ID or military state or federally issued identification that indicates American citizenship. The order specifically directs the Election Assistance Commission to change the federal voter registration form to require this documentation. The president's action stems from his claim that the United States has not adequately enforced federal election requirements that prohibit non-citizens from registering to vote and prevent counting ballots received after Election Day. However, election experts immediately raised significant concerns about the order's implications. The Brennan Center for Justice at New York University took to social media platform X with a stark warning. This executive order would block tens of millions of American citizens from voting. Presidents have no authority to do this. This order, like the SAVE Act now before Congress, would hurt voters and suppress the vote. The SAVE Act referenced is the Safeguard American Voter Eligibility Act, a Republican-backed bill that would make sweeping changes to voter registration procedures, including similar citizenship documentation requirements. Critics argue that many legitimate voters, particularly those from vulnerable populations, may not have ready access to the types of documentation required under this order, effectively preventing them from exercising their right to vote despite being citizens. The executive order represents the latest development in ongoing debates about election security versus voter access, with supporters claiming it will prevent fraud and opponents warning it creates unnecessary barriers to participation in the democratic process for eligible voters. In a stunning development out of Gaza, hundreds of Palestinians took to the streets Tuesday in northern areas, including Beit Lahia and Jabalia, waving white flags and carrying signs that read, "Stop the war." According to the New York Post, protesters were also heard chanting "Hamas out" in what represents an extraordinarily rare public demonstration against the militant group that has controlled Gaza since 2007. Video footage circulating on social media shows civilians marching and openly condemning Hamas rule while demanding the release of remaining Israeli hostages to end the renewed fighting. One protester captured in the footage didn't mince words, saying, "Hamas is demanding our people to remain steadfast. But how can we remain steadfast when we're dying and bleeding?" Another demonstrator at the protest, which reportedly began in front of the Indonesian hospital, declared, "Hamas must stop what is happening in Gaza. We're sending a message to the entire world. We reject the rule of Hamas." Yet another voice from the crowd shouted, "We say yes to peace, no to the tyrant rule which threatens the destiny of our people." These protests are particularly significant given Hamas's well-documented history of severely cracking down on any criticism of its leadership. While smaller demonstrations reportedly occurred in January, Tuesday's protests appear to be larger and more vocal than previous gatherings. The Palestinian demonstrations coincide with massive protests in Israel itself, where thousands have gathered around the Knesset and the Prime Minister's office in Jerusalem. Israeli demonstrators, led by families of current and former hostages, are demanding that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reinstate the ceasefire and hostage exchange arrangements that recently collapsed. Ofri Bibas-Levy, aunt of slain toddlers Ariel and Kafir Bibas, criticized Netanyahu's military approach, stating, "Military pressure kills the hostages. Military pressure raises the casualties." Meanwhile, Varda Ben Baruch, grandmother of Israeli-American hostage Eden Alexander, joined protesters asking, "Where is Phase 2? They forgot it. Bibi forgot about it." The breakdown in negotiations has led to Israel resuming its military campaign in Gaza, with Netanyahu's government declaring that any further talks will now take place under fire. This decision came after Hamas had agreed to release 24 living hostages in exchange for Israel's complete withdrawal from Gaza, a proposal Netanyahu rejected, preferring instead to extend the first phase of the ceasefire with fewer hostage exchanges. The dual protests on both sides of the conflict reveal growing frustration with leadership on all sides as the devastating war continues with no clear resolution in sight. Now here's something to make you question the future leadership of America. A viral video is making waves online showing college spring breakers in Florida completely bombing questions from the basic U.S. citizenship test. Conservative social media personality Caitlin Bennett posted the footage from Clearwater Beach, where bikini-clad students gave answers so wildly incorrect they'd make your high school civics teacher weep. When asked which state borders Canada, one student confidently answered Asia, while another admitted, "I didn't even know Canada had a border." It gets worse. One young woman, who shockingly revealed she's majoring in elementary education, claimed the United States won its independence from Spain. Not England, Spain, the Civil War. According to one future voter, that was fought between the East and West. And when asked about the shape of the Pentagon building, students insisted it was a square, apparently missing the entire point of the name Pentagon. The Second Amendment confusion was particularly concerning, with one student claiming it represents the right to vote. Others thought there were only 7 U.S. senators total in Congress. And in perhaps the most facepalm-worthy moment, when asked how many justices serve on the Supreme Court, one young woman responded, "So when you say that, do you mean like the FBI?" The New York Post reports the video racked up over 150,000 views in just 48 hours, triggering a flood of social media reactions. Critics didn't hold back, with comments like, "I've never seen a better video proving why the Department of Education needed to be abolished," and "Public education is a dismal failure." While some might dismiss this as cherry-picking the worst answers for entertainment value, the sheer number of students who struggled with what many consider basic civic knowledge has sparked legitimate debate about educational priorities in American schools. These questions, after all, are the same ones immigrants must study and answer correctly to become naturalized citizens. So next time you're worried about the state of American democracy, remember, at least some of the next generation thinks we fought Britain for independence from Spain, while Asia sits comfortably on the Canadian border. Well, that wraps up another episode of Ranting Politics Headline Updates. What a day in the news cycle. From Speaker Johnson floating the idea of eliminating federal courts to President Trump's executive order requiring citizenship proof for voter registration, it's been quite the political roller coaster. We also covered those rare protests in Gaza, where Palestinians are calling for Hamas to leave their territory. A significant development that shows the complexity of the ongoing conflict. And who could forget those spring breakers failing basic citizenship questions? Perhaps we need a national pop quiz before the next election. Remember, at Ranting Politics, we cut through the noise to deliver quick, engaging, and unfiltered updates on the stories that matter most, without the partisan spin. We don't align with a political party. We align with you, the American citizen. Keep up with all our latest episodes by following us on X at RantingRP. You can also find us on YouTube, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, and on the web at rantingpolitics.com. This is JOC signing off, and thank you, our loyal listeners, for choosing Ranting Politics Headline Updates. We'll be back soon with the updates you need to navigate these interesting times. Until then, stay tuned, stay informed, and as always, stay free.